No, Gene, but you should launder that launder. You should launder all of that money fast. Oh, wait, sorry, we're on.
Thanks.
We did that a few weeks ago, and I was like, let's keep it going. Anytime Gene's on, I'll like come in with like some end of a horrible story.
Well, I didn't realize that Westlaw paid kickback money like that to
Oh my
their
God, would
victims.
you
In,
stop?
in gold bars? What Bob Menendez is your rep? What?
Oh, wait a minute. I think we're on the air. Welcome, welcome everybody to another episode of Legal Tech Week, the show in which we talk about the top stories of the week. It's December 15th. And we're just realizing this probably should have been our year-end episode because we're probably not going to meet for the next couple of Fridays because of the holidays. But we'll do a year-end episode after the new year starts. But for those of you who are regular listeners and watchers and followers of this show, I think we're taking the next 2 weeks off. So that means you get to spend your Fridays doing boring Christmas and holiday stuff. This is, I am Bob Ambrogi. I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next. And we've got a full house of panelists here today. So let's go around and introduce ourselves, starting with Caroline. Hello, welcome.
Hi, yeah, good to be here. Thank you so much. My name is Caroline Hill. I'm editor-in-chief of Legal IT Insider. I've, in the last 3 hours, come down with a cold. So I might, depending on how it goes, I might keep my talking to a minimum, but we'll see how it goes. But it's lovely to be here.
You sound great. Don't worry about it. And Jean.
I'm Jean O'Grady, and I write the Dewey B Strategic blog, and I write a monthly column for Legal Tech Hub.
Jean and Niki Black.
My name is Niki Black. I am the head of SME and external education at Finipay, parent company of MyCase and LawPay. I write regular legal tech columns for ABA Journal, Above the Law, and the Daily Record. And I also oversee and write the benchmark reports and the legal industry report that we put out on the MyCase and LawPay side of things.
Thanks, Niki. And Stephanie.
Hey there, I'm Stephanie Wilkins, editor-in-chief of Legal Tech News at ALM.
Steve.
Steve Embry here. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads.
And Joe.
Joe Patrice from Above the Law and the Thinking Like a Lawyer podcast. I am here to just have the have the world crash in on me soon. Like I'm going to have most of the people that I'm hosting for holidays come in like 45 minutes. So you're seeing me the calm before a storm.
All right. Well, I hope that doesn't interfere with your being able to start your drinking for the weekend because we don't want to have any problems there. Apparently not. All right, well, there's a lot to talk about this week, but maybe we have to start with the fact that the Schwartzes are back again. They're unavoidable, but Joe, what happened?
Well, I don't know as though there is a weird coincidence about Schwartz being involved, but I don't know as though that's really the important part. The key is Michael Cohen, who we all may remember as Trump's fixer lawyer, who ultimately has turned state's evidence against him. He's, performed his duty and delivered good testimony and behaved himself. And his lawyer, who happens to be named Schwartz, decided to move to terminate the supervised release that they agreed to as part of the plea, and delivered 3 examples, like cases in the Second Circuit that would say under what conditions supervised release could be alleviated. And the 3 examples were really on point, just exactly the situation at hand and exactly the kinds of reasoning that he wanted. And they don't exist so much when you try to look them up, which brings back memories of prior Schwartzes who had this issue in the Malaysian Air case. I do not think that it has anything to do with that, but that is obviously a weird coincidence that people with the same name doing the same mistake. We don't know as though this is an AI thing, though we definitely know this is an AI thing.
When you read glitch in the simulation.
When you read these descriptions, the worst is it's not like this was in the middle of some like string site. it was he had like whole paragraphs explaining what the cases were, and all of them echoed the exact same language, and that exact same language read like how Chat GPT answers when you ask it a specific question, and then it rephrases it at the end, where it's like, and this is exactly a situation in which the Second Circuit would have agreed with the district court, blah, blah, blah. So it's really embarrassing. It looks pretty bad. We'll see what he hasn't responded to it yet. So it's all allegedly at this point, but it's bad. There's a lot to unpack kind of generally about Chat GPT and all, and about the laziness of lawyers, whatever. The one thing that struck me is that as problematic, to get serious, when you look at it, it appears as though the judge kind of figured this all out on his own. The other side hadn't necessarily flagged it. It seems as though prior counsel for him actually seemed to have figured out before the prosecutors. And that was troubling to the extent that it really suggests how, because Michael Cohen is a criminal docket that a lot of people pay attention to because it's pretty important and, going to potentially take away the former president's whole business empire. There's a lot of people in the criminal justice system who don't have that kind of a magnifying glass on their dockets, and I'm not altogether sure things like this would have been caught otherwise. Obviously, terminating supervised release would be good for those defendants, but I could imagine a lot more mischief happening to them too.
I'm also wondering, this is making me wonder if all of the large companies that have AI and do create citation systems are going to have a new citation that's like a skull and crossbones that designates cases that are completely toxic.
Like the new flagging system is just the pirate
Yeah,
flag.
exactly.
That's perfect. A little the new who uses that? Keysight? Do they use the little flags, right?
Well,
Or is that
everybody, it's
Lexus?
either a
Is-
stop
they
sign
all
or
use-
a
they all use
flag.
flag,
Everybody
right?
has their
Okay.
own version of red, green, and yellow, Now it's going to be black and poisonous and dripping blood.
Yeah. So I mean, so we don't know that it's for sure it's Chat GPT or that they use Chat GPT or anything else at this point, right? But it just sure looks pretty suspicious. Like what your article said, I mean, the judge pointed out that like one of the citations is just to like a random middle page of an actual reporter volume, but in a case it has nothing to do at all with this particular topic. And I mean, at least it was a real site, I guess, in a sense. That's something.
Yeah. No, I mean, it. If people are going to this seems like a pretty glaring case because of the way in which the letter motion was written, and it seems like a case where there was a lot of attention, obviously. But could you imagine like slipping a few bad cases into a long string site to make, maybe one of the cases was real and then a bunch weren't, and it makes it seem like the point of law is really overwhelming when it's not, but nobody cares because it's like the 8 millionth low-level drug case, and the judge doesn't care and the prosecutors don't care, or the defense attorneys barely care. This could be that's the sort of situation that could be real bad.
But I mean, I'm going back to all of the major information vendors have things called brief checkers. And that is part of what brief checkers do. They look at the authority and they simply have to be upgraded to anticipate the possible existence of completely fictitious cases.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in this case, we're dealing with smaller firms on the defense side, and I guess the real question is why doesn't the government do that? And I don't know. Maybe the government has the resources to do that, assuming there's not a shutdown or something, which there is every 5 or 6 months. But I don't know. It'd be nice if they did that sort of thing, but who knows?
Well, I
Another thing-
think first they have to streamline government using using AI to streamline government. And then maybe we can get to that.
Another thing that's interesting is, I don't know if anyone saw, Carolyn Elephant is a friend of a lot of people here. She's my co-author, and I'll put it in the chat. She posted on LinkedIn about how she suspects that some judges may be using AI in their orders. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And she sort of suggested why she thought that was, but coming from the other side, are they using AI? I mean, we know that someone in Columbia, if I recall. I can't remember.
Yeah,
That's
it was Columbia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are the judges stateside doing that? I don't know. It's kind of interesting. So I posted that in the chat. You can let me know what y'all think if you look at her post and why she thinks that. But it's interesting. It's showing up everywhere.
Right. Well, Columbia, did we talk about that last week? Columbia is also where they did an ordinance. Is that what you're talking about, the ordinance, or not the judge? It was somewhere where they issued an ordinance and realized after the fact that it was the member of the board or city council or whatever it was that had submitted it and just created it in Chat GPT. And
I think that was Brazil.
Brazil. Okay.
Yeah, that was Brazil. Colombia was the judge that used ChatGPT and the
Yeah,
case in the
okay.
metaverse.
Right. All right.
Yeah.
By the way, I just looked at Carolyn's post and there is a chat from someone who said that a dead giveaway that an AI wrote something is, it says, quote, "It is crucial," end quote. And that made me laugh.
Also, like, if one of the parties is named Acme, I mean, that sounds like
I mean, I don't know. Acme was used in hypos when I was around too, and this is
and
for anyone else.
cartoons.
Yeah, I mean, well, those of us of a Roadrunner and Wile E. Coyote generation use Acme all the time, right? I will say, I want to clarify because an in joke was made, and I want to make sure everybody is caught up on it. This use of the word "crucial" thing is a theory that Niki and apparently also Carolyn has, that Chat GPT is the only thing that uses the word "crucial." I disagree. I use it all the time, but
I use it all the time too.
yeah, they believe that that's the sign.
Well, the commenter to her post. It wasn't Carolyn. So some other person I've never met.
Oh, it wasn't Carolyn. Okay, never. All right.
Yeah. So.
All right. Well, we don't want lawyers using Chat GPT, but apparently in the UK it is now okay for judges to use Chat GPT.
Yeah.
And I guess sort of both Steve and Jean kind of cited the story, but Steve, I think you got dibs on it here, so you can.
Well, yeah, I actually pulled up the guidance that the UK Judicial Council gave to judges, and I feel a little embarrassed talking about this when Caroline Hill who's in the UK, has appeared for the show.
I actually love the fact that this is your two stories. I thought this absolutely.
But the thing that I thought was really kind of interesting about this is that the Judicial Council seemed to recognize that both judges and lawyers were going to use generative AI, and in fact, they described it as a potentially useful tool. They gave some really good definitions, distinguishing generative AI from artificial intelligence and talking about how AI generally had been used for some time. They talked about the limitations. They described how the tool works. They talked about privacy. They gave tips for how to maintain security. And they went on to say that as a general proposition, they didn't see that there was any reason for litigants to disclose the use of generative AI as a general proposition. But they went on to say that it probably would be incumbent upon judges to periodically remind lawyers of their obligations and duties, and if they used generative AI tools, the duties to check the sites and all of that. Interesting, and I talked about this in terms of the Fifth Circuit a while back. The Judicial Council went on to talk about the unrepresented litigants and how it would not be fair for them to have to check sites because they would not have the access and the sort of the knowledge or the sophistication to do that. And it kind of put a duty on the judges where they suspected if an unrepresented litigant had used generative AI, that they needed to inquire about it. They talked about some potential uses and some bad uses. And then it kind of really interesting, particularly in light of the discussion about Messrs. Schwartz. They had a section at the end, sort of hints about how judges could ferret out whether generative AI had been used. And there were two things that stand out. One of them is, well, if there are references to cases that have unfamiliar citations, sometimes from the United States. And another key would be if the document had U.S. spellings as opposed to British spellings. And then if it had some substantive errors and things like that. I just thought it was sort of a mature, studied examination of the problem, and really recognizing that this is here and we're not going to be able to stop it. And the notion that we would ban it or put these extra duties on lawyers and and tell judges not to use it and all that is just not realistic. And so I thought it was it wasn't perfect, I'm sure, but I thought it was a well done paper, well done instructional guide for judges that might be able to use it. And it sort of recognizes that a lot of judges don't have resources like we wish they would, and this is a potential solution for them. So that was well done.
I just want to say, I thought that when they say not recommended for legal research, I assume they're talking about using GDP4 out on the internet, because I do think that commercial services are less risky. But I think everything has to have the caveat. You have to know how to do legal research. You have to know how to validate anything you find, even in a really well curated legal research system that you're paying $1 bazillion for. If it's AI, you still have to know how to do thorough legal research and site checking. So I thought they were overly broad in saying not to use it for legal research.
They did, I think, in here, Gene, say a couple of times they talked about publicly available generative AI tools. But interestingly, they did point out that if you want to get good responses, you have to tailor and make kind of specific kind of requests and think through the problem that you really wanted to address. You can't just say, tell me about eminent domain and expect to get an answer that helps you, which I thought was, again, I mean, the people that wrote this, either they had good help or they'd really looked at it enough to understand some of the basic issues, which best I can tell from the US judges, with rare exception, we're not seeing that kind of studied response.
I agree.
Caroline, it came. So one of the they were clearly already using it. So one of the judges, in judge fashion, said that Chat GPT was jolly useful. And I think they realized that they had to, get on top of it.
Judge Schwartz, right?
It was. It was. And they've said, there is an element of recognizing reality. I guess there's the other thing is that all of this stuff, as I was thinking through this, I was challenging myself, thinking, is this all public domain? They're using Chat GPT, the public version, but presumably all of the information that they're putting in is going to end up in the public domain anyway. It's not like there's a kind of confidentiality issue. And they said, until the people need to become familiar with it, right? But yeah, it's interesting that I think that they seem to be engaging with it really positively, which is interesting for that generation. But whether there's going to be some screw ups, right? Like, I mean, there's going to be screw ups. It's just a fact.
I did a story last year on judges using Wikipedia to write their opinions. And there was a story that was a study done that found out that not only were they using Wikipedia as a reference source, but they were literally quoting articles verbatim out of Wikipedia. So this is a step up, I guess, if they're using Chat GPT.
Is it? Chat GPT is probably pulling it from Wikipedia. So.
Yeah, exactly. Like we need to. And this is a theme that we've had from the first Chat GPT lawyer sanction to here, but it really is just like these people are lazy. It's not the technology's fault. It's just a series of lazy people, whether they're going to Wikipedia or or just trusting Chat GPT. This is a series of people who don't understand that we used to have to walk both ways uphill in the snow to get a Lexus citation for something,
Well, I guess, when you talk about the judiciary, particularly in the United States, you have to sort of distinguish between the federal judiciary, which has a lot of assets. They have law clerks, but then you drill down to a lot of the state courts, and you have judges that, they don't have people to help them. I mean, they're on a shoestring kind of budget, and so
and it
it's
gets
all the
worse.
more.
Oh,
Go
yeah, I
ahead,
was going to say, and it gets worse in the U.S. And this, for international viewers, you will be shocked about this because it's stupid. In the U.S., half of our judges aren't even real judges. They're just like
They're not
doofuses.
lawyers,
They're
right?
doofuses who are running for office on a platform of putting, putting the 10 Commandments in front of the church, in front of the courthouse. Like, we have a bunch of those kind of people too, and so that's a crucial distinction.
Oh,
I
stop
thought
that.
but I thought we
Stop it.
appointed.
Stop it. Stop with the crucial. You did that on purpose.
I thought we appointed all those people to federal judgeships.
Well, good point. Good point. That is the new normal.
So in New York, we have judges that are not lawyers, and at the local level. Really,
that's a whole different thing.
Do you think you
They
can
could
tell
probably use
ChatGPT
ChatGPT to
to
help?
write like a judge? Do you think you can say write like a judge? Because like they do have a certain distinct way of writing. Presumably, you can tell it to write in that style.
Well, not only are people who are using AI just showing that they're lazy and not knowing how to walk both ways, uphill or whatever that was, as Joe said, but according to a story Gene picked up on this week, Chat GPT itself is getting kind of lazy.
Yeah,
Want to talk about that?
I don't know that much about it, but I just read these. There were several stories. One was on Ars Technica about Chat GTP was giving lazy answers, and people were speculating that it was having seasonal affective disorder. So I don't know if any of you had used it recently and found a dramatic difference in the results, but I didn't use it myself, so I just saw the story.
I use it all the time. In the last few weeks, it will forget after 2 or 3 comments in what you asked it to do in the first place. It used to go, you could have like 20 questions and a whole discussion with it, and it would remember where it started. Now it has forgotten. It's like becoming senile or something.
Niki, I have that problem too, so it's not just generative.
What season is it in the cloud? Like, what season would it be? It's a
Always
global.
cloudy.
And where is ChatGPT?
You nailed it.
It's cloudy.
Lack of sun. It's always cloudy.
Not in Silicon Valley, though.
I don't know. Is it any coincidence that all this started when Sam Altman problem started?
Fine. Yeah.
He stuck a monkey wrench into it.
There was some speculation about that it was depressed about his situation.
Maybe it's like certain other programs and it's not really AI. It's just Sam has been sitting there writing answers to everything. Let's get Catherine
100 million users.
It's a bit early days, but I spoke to an IT director in a UK firm who thinks that it's just going to get worse and worse, because obviously when it first came into our worlds, it had scraped the entire internet, and as people issue copyright claims and fight the use of their data, etc., or their copy, his view is that it's just going to, rather than getting better and better, it's just going to get worse and worse, which I thought was an interesting view.
So this is beyond necessarily the confines of this show, but this is a thing that's really like Tech Dirt, I know, has been on this. We are in the dumbest of all timelines, because we live in a world where we need people, both in the courts and in legislation, to be thinking about how to make this thing work in a good and non-dangerous way, and everybody's instead doing the dumbest possible thing. And among those things is the way we're thinking about copyright. Like, the idea that the person who has read a book can't base ideas off the book. Theoretically, if a human did that, we would not call that plagiarism. We would call that like, oh, they were influenced by this book that they had. But because the machine does it so smart, we're treating it as copyright. And so long as we do that, we're going to live in a world where we're going to keep making this thing dumber, despite the fact that it's going to be more pervasive. So we're just going to make a really dumb, pervasive thing.
It's really
Well,
interesting.
I came up, I don't know if the rest of you got this, but there was an email yesterday about the release of Case Text Timeline. And in the email, is it Allie, the PR person, cited the fact that Case Text was used to clear half of the backlog in the California Innocence Project. And I thought that was really interesting. Like we're talking all about the bad effects, but when you think of the backlogs around the United States in smaller courts, I think it would be insane to not think that there weren't genuinely great AI opportunities out there. And I think this is a really wonderful example.
Yeah, I covered that back when they first announced, when GPT-4 was out and they announced that they were helping the California Innocent Project. And I talked with Michael Samanchik, who's, now has moved on from there started his own organization. But yeah, he was just saying it was just a complete game changer in that regard for things like that, where they just have, all of these, wrongful convictions, just piles of paper no one's going to get through it. And it's really impressive in that regard. I agree, Jean.
If you're arguing there are good uses for generative AI, I'm with you on that.
Do you want me to?
It's not all bad. It's not all like an apocalypse or anything, is it, Niki?
But you would think that to read the news.
Well, so the story I picked today was my goal here was to take everyone into, I was thinking just the weekend, but really into the new year with a lot of gloom and doom, because why not? So my story was about, it really caught my eye. It was a New York Times article that talked about, what do they call it? They call it the P-doom factor. Let me put this in the chat real quick. But it's and it's apparently, this is the what's your sign in Silicon Valley these days, I guess. Apparently at parties, they all walk up to each other and say, what's your P-doom factor? And the P-doom factor is, they describe it as math speak for the probability of doom. It's the way some artificial intelligence researchers talk about how likely they believe it is that AI will kill us all or create some other cataclysm that threatens human survival. So like I said, I really wanted to make sure that we all got depressed just like Chat GPT is getting. And according to, so some of the things that I thought were so interesting were that this is basically like the pickup line in Silicon Valley at parties. Everyone knows their P-doom number. And Jeffrey Hinton, who's a prominent AI researcher who quit Google this year and began warning about AI risks, recently estimated that if AI was not strongly regulated, there was a 10% chance it would lead to human extinction in the next 30 years. And then in the article, they ask, there's a lot of obvious follow-up questions. What counts as doom is if only 50% of humans died as a result of AI, is that doom? What if nobody died, but we all ended up jobless and miserable? And how would AI take over the world anyway? Well, I think we know how AI will take over the world anyway, because we've seen it in Battlestar Galactica. We've seen it in Terminator. The machines already have access to all the things, Internet of Things. At this point, they could literally just shoot us with our toasters if they wanted to. They could kill all the humans with our toaster ovens. I mean, come on.
I need to get off this call.
My toaster is not ballistic, so we're okay there. Look, I'm actually more interested in this story on another level. Silicon Valley people are hooking up. I'm confused by that. I'm also confused. I'm decidedly not confused by the idea that a bunch of tech bros' response to the question is, well, is it really doom if only half the people die? Presumably, the people who keep rejecting them.
It's just a Marvel movie. It's fine.
I mean, yeah,
what is the artificial the emotional intelligence metric in Silicon Valley?
I mean, that's a crucial question to answer before we get into this.
I love that article, but I'm glad you said that, because I was like, what parties are people going to where they're talking about their P-doom? And then when you said Silicon Valley, I'm like, oh yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. It makes me feel less of a nerd than I thought I was.
Because that also means they're not. It's not like they're going to any of the cool places. Like they're not leaving like Mountain View or whatever. Like they're not making it all the way into like a club in like San Jose or something.
Well, I think it is. I think even though it's funny, it's an important question, because like I said, if you are a fan of sci-fi. It is an incredible, I mean, the minute this came out, I loved it, but I still think this is like the honeymoon phase, and it's just going to go to hell in a handbasket pretty quickly. And that hell in a handbasket could include imminent death for all of us. So Happy New Year.
So maybe that's why
Joe,
Chat
did you
GPT
notice
is
someone
depressed.
just put
Yeah.
table stakes in the chat?
Yeah,
Do you have to
I
leave
sure
now?
did.
Oh,
No,
what
that's perfect.
I wanted everyone to add into the chat their PDoom. I think we should all just throw our PDoom on the table, and we can come back to this and revisit it at some point and see who was right.
Wait, okay. I don't know if we all need to throw our P-dooms on the table like that. That just sounds like we're gonna get sued.
Okay, so who asked what the range is? It's a percentage, so it's 1 to 100, 0 to 100.
But will it drive Bob's ratings up?
Does Joe hate
P-doom?
table stakes? Is that what I missed? Somehow I missed
Yeah, I
that.
mean,
Someone
look,
had put it in the chat.
table stakes is that we have to have a P-doom.
Oh.
It's crucial. Table stakes is that it's crucial to have your P-doom worked out before you go to a Silicon Valley party.
I mean,
I'm also super excited for Legal Week because I'm just going to walk up to people at that bar the first night and just start asking everyone what their PDoom is. I'm going to do this.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, I think I need to wear a different like T-shirt every day because I've had so many ideas of just like T-shirts to wear, and like one could just be like P-doom with a number.
Joe's company just
that's
arrived
good.
and immediately turned around and left when they heard what was going on here.
My P-doom is 10%, and all I got was this lousy T-shirt. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
If only we knew a guy that made T-shirts, Joe.
Oh, yeah. We do know a guy who makes T-shirts. Used to, anyway.
All right. Well, before we leave Chat GPT entirely, I'm going to. I did a story this week about our friend Raymond Blyde. Blyde? It keeps changing his name, how he spells his last name. But he's the guy who has the site Legal Pioneer. He does a lot of data collection and site collection in the legal tech space. But he rolled out this kind of interesting thing this week where he went through and identified as many as he could find of people who had created GPTs that were law related in some way. And of course, if you have the Chat GPT Plus subscription, you can now create your own GPTs. I know Niki's been playing around with it and creating a few. I don't know if you made them into Raymond's directory or not, but he found almost 600.
Mine were not legal.
Yeah, okay. Yours were related to wine, I'm sure. He found almost 600 of these legal, as he called them, legal co-pilots, his GPTs, or people created that have something to do with law. So on one hand, it's really kind of interesting to see how people are using this. On the other hand, it's also kind of scary to see how people are using this. And some of them were just like downright weird. Like one of them that he's got featured on his front page of his directory here is the Agent Aardvark, Guardian of Men's Rights. And when you click on it, it's a GPT that he's
every one of those people knows their P-doom. Every one of them.
They do. But this is a persona dedicated to advocating for men's rights, addressing legal and social issues, and providing support and resources to men facing various challenges in today's society. There's lots of weird things like that. I mean, there are very few actual, very practical or useful GPTs that I could find. I mean, there's some like a divorce navigator that are sort of designed to help answer some very basic questions about family law. I think it was related to a particular state. I forget. But anyway, it was really interesting more as just kind of if you want to just kind of dive in and see how people are using this ability to create these GPTs, it's kind of interesting.
In a sense, the men's rights one is also a divorce navigator, in its own way.
It navigates you straight to that.
It's an express lane.
That result.
Yeah, the P incel of the users of that one is very high.
P incel, yeah, I like that one. Yeah, pincel was sweet. Or wait, no.
And yes, we have a link. I'll give you a link.
Is that just on his website, Bob? Is that just on his main? He asked me to write about that, and I didn't because I was doing tons of stuff. But it looks really interesting.
There's my post on it, and the link is, here's the link, direct link to his little thing. I mean, you have to have a GPT Plus account to use any of them, but I mean, as long as you have that, what is it, $20 a month or whatever it is for the GPT.
Although that's
Plus.
restricted at the moment. They're not allowing people to upgrade.
They just reopened it a couple days
Did they
ago.
reopen it?
Oh,
great.
really? I didn't even know that.
That's awesome.
Oh.
Yeah, they were overwhelmed. Oh, it was actually, it coincided with the whole OpenAI debacle that they stopped people from upgrading. They said they were overwhelmed, but that's good to hear that they are back on.
So
I
they
got
just
shut off on DALL-E yesterday.
They just let everyone start upgrading, and it got crappy. So that also checks out.
So
before we move off GPT, do you want me to talk about, because mine's kind of still, I don't want to set people up for thinking that we're moving away and then come back to it. If you want me to talk about
so I actually thought we were moving away from GPT with yours. So okay, so good. We'll go to yours.
I mean, it's not actually. So I did. I know we're going to do the end of year wrap up.
Yeah.
But I actually for once did it on time, and I canvassed, because it's been a mammoth year, hasn't it? So I thought I'd canvass a few people's opinions about some of the milestones and challenges of the year, and one of them was Richard Susskind, who, as you know, is always great to chat to, and he was talking about there are three things about this year that really sort of jump out, or we should pay attention to. They are pretty much all GenAI related. Actually, I suppose it's not Chat GPT, but it is GenAI related. But so he was saying that for the first time, and I was going to segue into something when we were talking about access to justice earlier, but anyway, his 3 points. So he said for the first time ever, technology is a board level conversation, properly a board level conversation in law firms. Like, whereas obviously they have had some involvement, they might talk about signing off on a practice management system, but generally it's been on the peripheries. Now it's mainstream strategic. And he was saying that from an access to justice perspective, that there's now opportunities opening up where we can finally see that maybe we will start having a real crack at solving the access to justice issue. It'll be really interesting to see what next year brings. And then the last thing he said, which was really interesting, was that he thinks that law firms are looking at productivity. He thinks that they're looking at GenAI in terms of how to use it. Like, we've been talking about a lot of use cases, which is the right thing, great. But he said he doesn't see an awful lot of firms or businesses really looking at long-term disruption. And he said it's the innovator's dilemma. Like, how soon do you start disrupting your own business? Or do you just leave it, and then is it too late? But the interesting thing he said was that the main competitor, as far as he can tell, is the client. The AI empowered client is going to be taking over a lot of the work from law firms. I've heard other people say it, but it was just really interesting. But it was all around GenAI. We weren't moving away from it because it was a reflection on 2023, which so we talked about nothing but for 2023. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think what Susskind says is about access to justice is true, or about the justice gap and all that, but I still think there's a lot of hurdles and impediments to that happening. I mean, one of the things I also wrote about this week, I didn't pick it as a story, but maybe I should have, was this the Free Law Project launching this new thing to try and open source the whole court docketing and e-filing systems around the country. It's one thing for them to develop an open source platform. It's another thing for any courts to adopt it. But I mean, the one of the biggest, we've talked for years, and Gene, I know, has talked a lot about this, and all of us have talked about the fact that the public doesn't necessarily have easy access to case law, and there's been all sorts of efforts to get the public access to case law. But now the same is true of just court docketing information. It's still really hard and really expensive to get access to court docket information. And the federal PACER data, I think they said if you want to just download all the federal PACER data, it would cost you something like $2 billion or something crazy like that. And so, in order for generative AI to really be a effective way of helping to close the justice gap, it is going to need, we're going to need access to all this data, not just case law and statutes and everything, but also all the docket data and the motions and things coming out of the trial courts and all of that. And so I think this is really possibly a big first step toward that. And I think Suffolk is also working on something to try and open up access to dockets and courts. So I think that's going to be a really critical aspect of getting the data that we need in order to feed the generative AI.
Would you potentially call it crucial?
I think it's crucial. I think it's definitely crucial.
I think it's definitely.
I don't like you anymore, Joe. I used to. I've changed my mind.
I've seen
it's also table stakes, so you know.
You can
use it for litigants in person who have a ton of documents or whatever that they're relying on. You can use GenAI potentially, and I've seen startups in this space doing this already, to create to extract the key points and put it into some kind of form that they can submit to court, right? Because obviously a lot of people are not trained in this. To us, it's probably not that hard to kind of scan and say, right, these are the key points, but actually it's a case of what does it better, you know, like, and this is the really interesting part of some of the conversations that we're having, that we're moving away from this, particularly when it comes to access to justice. Again, it was such a debate over whether this is a right or wrong thing to say, but anyway, we're moving away from perfect to good, right? Is it better than what we've got? Is it better than nothing? And it can already start to extract data and put together a pretty good, well, you know, the company that I've been speaking to, they're still trialing it. It's a company called Wexler, which is really cool. But yeah, I think there's going to be huge potential. Even with that, I think I agree with your point, Bob, about, you know, being able to access data and docketing, etc. That's critical. But just in terms of what they're doing in their own cases, I think it's going to already help as well.
Well, also
critical.
Same thing would be true with public access to the data, because the data is so inconsistent and not well tagged, and there's no normalization, and it would be an opportunity to create normalization and tagging and all sorts of things that would make all of the information in aggregate much more useful.
Mm-hmm.
Along the lines of tech and access to justice, this just made me think of that. Like, is tech going to solve the access to justice problem or not? And I do a legal tech news story roundup on a LinkedIn occasionally. And one of the articles I included this week was from the ABA Journal. Matt Reynolds wrote it. And it talked about, I'll put that in the chat, but it talked about whether how virtual hearings are great and all, but it really only solves the problem for like half of the people in the justice system. The other half don't have, like, this digital divide. And he's talking about how virtual hearings can be problematic when it comes to the access to justice concept, because people don't have the technology to engage in them oftentimes. So I thought that was sort of an interesting angle on that same thing.
I just think it's always interesting that everyone seems to pose the question in terms of, like, will tech solve the access to justice gap? I'm like, there's room in there. Like, even if it's not solving it, helping it is a good start. I mean, maybe my
also during the backlogs.
How about throw money at it? Let's instead of cutting it constantly, cutting LSC over and over and over again so it barely exists. How about it gets funded? What about that? But no.
Yeah. But you know, it could do it with fewer. I mean, I think the amount of funding would be less if it could be automated, because you'll need fewer people to process a bazillion pages of documents. I mean, I think that it could potentially be a win-win.
But they'll just cut the funding more instead of keep the funding.
Oh, Niki, your doom score is so high.
She's the PDOOM queen.
But your point, Stephanie, is a good one. It's like, is it better than nothing, right? Like,
yeah. So, and I'm not saying give people crappy lawyers by any means, but there are a lot of steps between where we are and solving the access to justice problem. Addressing a few of them in a good way is a good start. Is what I'm saying.
Someone earlier in the chat mentioned medical
about Susskind, right? No,
pardon?
Different.
No, so yeah, someone in the chat mentioned the medical profession, and we we were talking about how, you know, in terms of this, that in the medical profession, you've got peer review, you've got, when you introduce new concepts or trial new things, you've got peer review, and you've got all kinds of different processes to test things out. And a lot of reform, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new tech in the legal industry, you know, obviously you do have some degree of testing, but you haven't got the same kind of really extensive, you know, it's often senior person says, we think this is a good idea. They'll, you know, they'll do some testing, but it's not the same kind of really deep analytical process, peer-driven review. And almost we need something more in the legal sector, something that mirrors that when we're sort of trialing this stuff in the access to justice space. So we can start saying, well, is it? Because obviously we don't want to just go, well, yeah, it's a bit crappy, but there was nothing before. That's, you know, but is it better? Does it add value? You know, we need to sort of start working out, is it better? How much better? And I mean, yeah, better than nothing is better, right? But
Well,
Something,
there's an interesting, go ahead.
No, you go.
There was an interesting, I think, comment along the lines of whether tech is going to actually help access to justice, or if it's capitalism has its way and it just makes everything worse instead of better. Dennis said, Dennis Kennedy, how many people think Susskind's insights are new insights? And then Legal Type said, especially with all the savings, we're going to fill our lives with all kinds of new creative activities. I feel like we've all discovered with technology that there's this Jetsons idea, but what actually ends up happening is they just make us work harder and harder and pay us less and less. And I kind of see the same thing. I think that pessimism is accurate. I mean, it's not, it could happen that way, but that's not the way it goes. It just always goes downhill instead of uphill for us.
Well, this is fundamentally this is the singularity theory, right? That it will always go that way until a certain level of technology happens that flips that script. And we are not in, I mean, people with very low PDOOM scores probably think that this will be that moment. We'll see. But yeah, but that's the whole concept of the singularity, that there is an eventual level of tech that will lead to capitalism does not need to further exploit people into new functions, but we'll see.
This year was the 10th anniversary of this report that the Legal Services Corporation did 2013, is that 10 years ago, on the report of the Summit of the Use of Technology to Expand Access to Justice, which was for its time a really seminal report that they did, where they kind of put together this group and studied all the ways the technology could help expand access to justice and made very specific recommendations as to things that people should be doing to employ this, not just people, but organizations should be doing. They are reconvening that and looking to put out a new study and a new summit. In January, they're going to meet, bring together people from all over the country to begin once again to study this issue and put together a report. So it'd be interesting to see what they come up with. I mean, it's actually, on one hand, I'm really torn on the extent to which we've made much progress. I mean, over the last decade, we have made nowhere near, I think, the progress that people wish we'd made on the access to justice front. I mean, if you ask somebody like Jim Sandman, who was a key to putting out that report a decade ago, the former Legal Services Corporation president, I think he would be the first to admit that we haven't made anywhere near the progress he had hoped we would. But we definitely have made progress. I mean, the justice gap maybe keeps getting bigger, but maybe that's because the way we define legal problems and the kinds of legal complexities that we deal with all the time continue to expand. But in terms of being able to provide non-lawyers with access to information and services and self-help resources, I think we've definitely made progress over the past decade, but so certainly nowhere near what we could have done.
And I think this came up, I mean, was it Relativity Fest? It was a panel a number of us were on together, where I was just like, everyone, I kept saying, I was like, everyone keeps using the word potential. And I think potential is the word doing a lot of heavy lifting there. Like, these new technologies create a lot of potential to help a lot of this, not fix it. Again, like, that's why I like their word expand, not we're so far from fixing anything, and it's a much bigger problem to fix. I mean, you can address small parts of it, but the potential is there. But like, people need to do it. Maybe, I mean, we said, like, these low PDOOM score people, maybe they're the ones that are the ones that are actually going to work on fixing parts of it or expanding it, or I don't know. But it's just, I don't know.
It doesn't even have to be that radical, right? Like, so if you look at the divorce space, where I just wrote about in the UK, this online divorce platform called Amicable. It's been bought by one of our big companies, Octopus, which owns all sorts of different things, and they're providing this is part of their offering. And it's kind of it's radical and it's not, right. They've automated a lot of the divorce process. They give you a fixed fee. Trust, I probably shouldn't say this in public. When you've been through divorce, it sounds great. It's just like, why didn't I go there? And actually, that is a kind of access to justice in itself, right, for the average person. And there's all these new offerings which are actually solving a real problem, and that's what we need more of. We don't necessarily need radical stuff. We need stuff that solves everyday problems, and the cost is one of the big things, right? Like, if you can sort of manage the cost of legal services, I think that is going to change people's worlds.
This is a slight change of topic, but it's related.
Uh-oh.
But no.
You can't wait.
Everyone, when I say I mean slight means slight. So you mentioned Jim Sandman, who we saw do an event recently, he speaks about the importance of access to justice in really good ways, having been on the front lines of it for so long. I feel like these kind of legal tech conversations, he's been around. He's mostly about access to justice proper, but he's been for several years now, like occasionally cropping up at these legal tech things. I think this is a place where he definitely is going to crop up more, because the way in which we define this going forward is going to be very tech focused. And I would just ask future conferences who bring him in to speak about this, like, he has walk-on music that's just written for him, right? Like, why have we never seen him come on to Metallica? Like, there's a song written for him. Come on, people. No
Not
one,
the Andrews sisters,
really?
Hey, Mr. Sandman, or whatever. No.
Yeah, no, not the Andrews sisters. Yes, good point. Let's go with Metallica instead, but also a good backup option.
Yes. No, I was going to make a baseball analogy, but I don't know if that would go any further.
It would have fit, like, because that was Rivera's.
Yeah, well, no, I know. But I was going to say, I don't know if that would have gone over any better than Metallica.
Is this a bit where we all sing?
It is, with our mics muted. Yeah. Well, part of the reason that Sandman is always showing up at these conferences to talk about tech is because he believes it is crucial to the access to justice.
See, there we go. Yeah, I mean, I've seen him at non-tech. I've seen him at non-tech things talking about access to justice also, but like, whenever I see him at tech ones, I'm like, oh yeah, this is good, and he should be doing that more, and he should be highlighted more, because he kind of lives in that zone where we kind of wish, those of us who want a low PDOOM wish that AI would go.
The kind of sad thing is, whenever you go to one of these legal tech conferences and they have a panel on access to justice, it's like the panelists and a couple of people in the audience, and everybody else is off having cocktails or something. Nobody seems, even, and this has happened at the Relativity conference, a little better, I think, this year. The thing Steffi and I went to last week, the TLTF Summit, they had a panel on access to justice. Like,
because they always have it as like the last panel of the last day too,
right,
which is like half the people are gone
because it's an afterthought.
Yeah.
Also, people, like, if you instead want to go have cocktails, you could also just have cocktails at the event too. Like, you could do both.
You can
bring it together.
I just want to point out that Daniel Smallwood posted the transcript, and it starts out with the kickbacks. Joe, I'm going to kill you.
I didn't say kickbacks. That was him. I made a joke about you laundering money through gold bars.
All right, we all ought to use this AI, I guess.
I can't
Anyway,
get the
access to
blame
justice
for us,
doesn't
yeah.
really matter with the apocalypse coming soon anyway. So I don't know what it matters.
100% peace, P-Doom.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I avoided my story because I thought it was gonna be a downer, and now we've been just talking about our doom scores all day.
Did we not talk about your story?
I didn't put it in the thing because I thought it would be too sad.
Somebody
I mean,
mentioned it in
Which
the
one?
comments.
The one about the
You have
Israel?
3 minutes.
tech
Go ahead.
company.
Yeah,
That
the
was a really
Israeli
good story.
startup.
Did
Yeah.
you see in the comments someone complimented you on that
Oh,
story?
thank you. No, I'm the worst at comments. That's my resolution for this show only for the new year is to get
Just
better
to
at
read
comments.
comments. Do you want to
Yeah,
quickly talk
first
about
read
that? Because we've got a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So, Israel, the startup nation, everyone knows they have a ton of startups there, and a number of them are legal tech. So I just reached out. I started like organic conversations actually with Rocky Messing from Alterney. I was just emailing with him like, how are you doing? Whatever. And like I had already had the idea to write stories. He's like, I'm on a group WhatsApp with some people, like, do you want me to ask them anything? So that turned into him getting me comments, and then I talked to Zach Abramowitz and Nir Golan, and like it's just I didn't try to paraphrase them. I left it in their own words because I have no business trying to rewrite what they're going through. But it was just, I mean, it's very sobering what they're going through, but just the spirit of innovation that is there, and like how they're just like, we have no choice, we have to keep going. And like I think it was Zach saying like, my biggest driving thing is that I do not ever want a single client to regret having worked with a company in Israel. And so like that, it's just a very, I mean, I wanted to write this article and I knew it would be heavy stuff, but even just having some of the phone calls, like I left them being like almost in tears. I'm like, I'm not going to cry in front of them, obviously, because I'm not the one having the worst day here, but it's a lot, and it's good to actually hear from them. And the reality, it's very similar to what we heard people going through in Kyiv and things like that too. The companies there, where they're like, I'm on a call or on a Zoom, and there's sirens and bombs exploding and rocket fire. But it's, yeah. So a lot of doom there, but not existential. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. No, it was great. It was a great piece.
I've been
Great,
contacted
great.
by someone who said that there's a legal tech Israeli it's a group coming to London, Israel legal tech delegation coming to the UK. It's quite interesting. I definitely follow that up.
All right. Well, on all those cheery notes, the AI apocalypse and world wars and all of that.
I feel like you're depressed now, Bob. You seem really down. You lost all your
My
energy.
P-Doom scale
There's
just
no
went
good
way up.
Yeah, there's no good transition there. I'm like, ugh. I'm like,
Happy holidays,
Well,
everybody.
it's the holiday.
Yeah.
Just not feeling it right now. I don't know.
Well, this will make you really happy to realize it's only a month and a half till legal week.
Yeah, and so I'm going to actually miss part of Legal Week now because I'm going to go to this legal services thing I was just talking about, this summit, which happens to happen on the 31st, which happens to be the second or third day of Legal Week.
Didn't we all talk about not going to Legal Week because we were mad at the people running it, or no? Oh wait,
Did we talk about that?
Wait, hold on, I had mute off.
I'm not. If you think I'm running it, you are mistaken.
Fair.
I might not be there next year.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not currently due to go, but I'm relying on my very strong sense of FOMO to make last minute change of that.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to go for like a day. And then we were just talking in the chat before. There's another legal conference that same week. Also, it's Niki suggested there may start to be one every day next year. There's so many legal tech conferences right now, but
It's like my Advent calendar then. Like every day, you pull out a new. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe a little bottle of Jim Beam in there. In
So
there.
that
It
definitely
was
could have been like October,
wild
November.
turkey today.
Wild turkey. Okay.
Yeah.
At
I
least
gave-
somebody has the spirit. That's good.
Yeah.
My dog has one with dog bones.
Oh my god.
Exactly. I saw one of those when I went to go pick up some cat food the other day.
Yeah.
I really like the Nakatomi Tower one where
That one is-
Gruber moves down every day.
There are now several versions of it, and they're all amazing.
Yeah.
It has Hans Gruber going down a floor every day of Nakatomi Plaza because Christmas isn't Christmas until Hans Gruber has fallen off of Nakatomi
Right.
Plaza.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right.
R.I.P. Alan Rickman. Yeah.
Alan
good.
Rickman.
Oh.
Well, it's
What
been
was the
fun.
what is the other conference that week? It's the Law Droid, right? That was he's
Yeah,
having
Law
an
Droid,
AI
yep.
conference or something. Yeah. Okay.
But that's
Law Droid, sorry.
online, so people can still go to Legal Week and watch that intermittently or even speak at it. You know?
Yeah.
And you've got skills as well. haven't you?
Yeah.
Skills.
Weird to
I mean, if you're
overlap.
at Legal Week, you got to be at Legal Week. You can't really do other stuff.
Yes.
That's my feeling. You got to dig it, dive in.
I certainly can. I'm already drowning. I'm gonna have like nothing but legally to talk about for the next month and a half. So
Yeah. All right.
yeah.
All right. So I guess that we are not going to be here for the next 2 weeks. So that means we will be back, whatever that is, the first week of January.
Probably like the 5th, January.
I think it's like the 5th or something. Yeah, I'm not sure.
January 5th, Friday the 5th.
Yep.
So we can, we'll be back then. We will try and do our year in review if we want to do that week, unless like major legal tech things happen over the next couple of weeks too. We can talk about those as well.
Yeah.
But I
Can we just
do-
put out
yeah.
could we just put out a plea to not make giant announcements for the next 2 weeks?
You know, I've tried that. It doesn't work. I went on one time when I was going on vacation. I like put out a thing on my blog saying, "Please, legal tech companies, don't put out don't do
not-
anything this week."
Not not every announcement needs to be covered, right? Like there are minor announcements, and PR people think they're very important, but they don't need to be covered. Like the crucial announcements, though, we can get when they come out.
That's
I
table
do.
stakes.
I
These are
did
crucial.
last year though. It inspired. It's almost been a year since Bob wrote his "'Twas the Night Before New Year's" poem about me writing that story. So we're almost at a year of
Good.
I forgot about that.
Somebody has to
That's right.
post that on their blog, I want to see that.
All right,
Uh,
we're hearing from the chats that everyone's holding off till legal week anyway, so we're going to be fine.
Good.
Okay.
Good. All right. All right then. Well, everybody have a good holiday season. Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January. Thanks.
Great.
all right.
Holidays. So long.
Bye.
Happy holidays, everybody. Bye.
Ernst.